Just a small disclaimer here, we're really sorry, but some of the audio is a bit rubbish up until 20 minutes in. We'll try to do better next time.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Nerding Out, Geeking Out. I'm Luke.
I'm Gresham.
I'm James.
And today we are going to be talking about special effects, the movement from stop motion, the creation of stop motion, the addition of CGI, up to modern techniques where you use a mixture of both, practical and non-CG. So it's kind of a technical geeking out session.
Yeah.
So it's kind of nerding out whilst geeking out at the same time.
There'll be a bit with special with some films that we
We're
are.
definitely going to just go off on tangents.
I think we'll be referencing a lot of films that I hope a lot of people have watched. Also, for our fans out on YouTube, if you're watching this, apologies for the absolutely bright,
The Bride.
the brightness of our shirts. I was just driving over. I called the boys up and I was like, "Lads, shite shirt. Let's do a shite shirt podcast."
So this has happened.
So this has happened.
I
And the worrying thing
apologise.
is we already had these shirts.
Yes.
Hopefully, most employers offer a free eye test.
Yeah.
So if we damage your retinas in the process, we do apologise. So shall we kick off?
Supposedly.
Okay, so I've got my notes in front of me, of course.
Yep. You're gonna start with the ancient.
I had to go a little bit further back.
Before the computers.
Before the computers, when film barely existed, the very first frame-by-frame photography was called the Humpty Dumpty Circus. This was done in 1898.
Any relation to Humpty Dumpty who sat on a wall?
I think it might be
Okay.
after he had a great fall.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Okay. Fair enough.
So this was the first use of stop motion technique where objects were animated. It was using the person who did its young daughter's toys to basically move it around and take photos every movement. I believe this went on to a very, very limited showing, but it was the original creation, and it's now lost, and you cannot see it anymore,
Oh,
which is sad.
I'm surprised. But, yeah.
But the following one, which actually was showcased in I guess theaters at the time because it wasn't really cinemas, was object manipulation used in a small short film called The Haunted Hotel or The Haunted House, depending on your translation. It was done in 1907, and this showcased the use of inanimate objects to create motion. So there's a scene where a table is being shot with the camera, and they've done frame by frame things like a knife cutting up some salami or a bread knife cutting through some bread.
Okay.
So it's the very, very early point of essentially special effects. They also had things like
Napkins going around.
yeah, and there was overlays as well used for the first time where I think they projected pre-shot footage onto a backdrop.
I'm just imagining all of this kind of started with just, I don't know. I can imagine just a really annoyed parent just being like, I need something to entertain the kids with. Let's just, like, if I do this, they'll be entertained for hours and I can just bugger off to do my own work.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that was part of the reason this came about.
Maybe.
Out of curiosity, how much was cameras back then?
Or
Because
I would hasten to think.
something like that would have, if it's frame by frame shot, that's an individual.
Individual cell
Yeah.
being used every time
Yeah.
and exposed.
Yeah. Because they were the original ones with the not the gunpowder light, but where it created the flash.
Yes. We blew up a bulb every time.
Yeah, that was that. Did they use black powder?
I think was that beforehand. They did it one. I thought they did it one time. I could be wrong.
Yeah,
This is something we haven't researched. I am not going to tread on the toes and get everything wrong. This would be another episode we could do, though.
That's fair.
We could do the creation of photography. So after that, we started to see a bit more integration with live action. using a mixture of stop motion animation with live action footage. The first major breakthrough was the 1933 film of King Kong by P.S O'Brien, who animated a Kong creature using stop motion and combined it with live action. So I've got a photo of this on the slide deck that everybody hopefully will have on the screen, where they have a sheet and they project the stop motion footage they've produced with Kong onto the sheet, and then they have the actress in front of that sheet, which they're then refilming. So they create
It looks so cursed.
an analog overlay.
It looks so cursed, man. Like,
As a perspective, they got it right.
no, as a perspective, it's fair. It's just the image they've used of Kong is just a cursed image. Yeah,
Yes.
like that is
That's the thing of nightmares.
100%.
And
Whoever saw that would definitely not having a good night's sleep.
the funny thing is, if you actually watch the footage from that film, you can tell it was done with stop motion, and you can tell that Kong was actually furry
Okay.
because you can tell where someone's fingers have brushed the fur and pushed it out the way with each
Brilliant.
shot that when they've moved the model. This, of course, created optical composition, allowing stop motion characters to be overlaid into live action. We then see refinement of this in the 1940s and 1960s. Some examples are Mighty Joe Young from 1949, which was then remade in the 90s. It was a film that I saw,
I watched the 90s
Yeah.
Mighty Joe Young. Yeah.
where we had a CG monkey,
Yes.
which is quite funny. So it almost went full circle.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was done in a similar nature, but the animation style had improved. It seems like they might have learnt from the mistakes of King Kong with the fluffiness a little bit, so that it does it less so. Still happens though. And then actually one of my favourite old films is The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad from 1958. Now, if you haven't seen it, both of you, I would recommend watching it, because although the stop motion looks slightly dated, some of it actually looks really good still.
I've seen clips, the one with the one-eyed giant,
Yes.
the Cyclops. I saw that was on a YouTube video I watched. Series.
I'd recommend looking up the skeleton.
I'm currently looking at a picture of that. The
Yeah,
skeleton scene.
I'm trying to still get onto the files because for some
The-
reason my computer's not allowing me to.
Yeah, I was going to say that the skeleton doesn't actually look too bad.
Yeah, this looks really good.
Yeah. But I don't know. So the Cyclops, weirdly, I feel like the picture that you got of the Cyclops behind the rocks of the mountain, where you just kind of see his face and like his chest and everything like that, that looks really good.
Yeah.
The moment you showed me the picture of him walking across the road, or was that all like just behind the scenes?
No, that is all. So what seems to happen is some shots were framed really well,
Yes.
and
yeah.
they did a very good job of matching the color gradient between the animation and then the live action footage. Other times there's like clearly a line across parts of the screen, but overall the effect of using stop motion for something like, let's say, human moving was quite good, and that's because we had high-speed photography, or relatively high-speed photography already, so that people had mapped out the shapes of what human would walk like.
Yeah.
When you see things like there's like a dragony lizard thing, it doesn't look right, and it's mainly because they hadn't actually mapped the shape of what that sort of creature would move like.
Yeah.
It's very similar to if you ever see old paintings of horses running. Both legs are forward, and then both back legs are backwards.
Yes.
Instead
yes.
of how they would actually canter.
Yeah.
Because they were never truly able to see.
Yes, exactly, because it was so quick, people
Perhaps so
couldn't.
fast. Also, just want to track back in there. I have fact checked. Yes, the old age of flash photography, single use bulbs or black powder. But yeah, sorry. Now we can go back to this.
So yeah, that included dynamic motion techniques, so allowed animated monsters to exist more believably within live-action environments by layering the background and foreground around the stop-motion figures. So I think it was done similar to matting would nowadays. Then we move on to a rather famous thing. So, 1977, The Star Wars is released onto everybody's screen. It's a massive sensation, partly due to the fact that the special effects were incredible for 1977. We see the introduction of a brand new technology, and that is a motion-controlled camera. So, the majority of Star Wars ships are filmed in that film using a ship which is static, and then the camera itself moves backwards, and they film it in a way that when you get rid of the green screen or blue screen behind it, it looks like it's flying towards you or away. So this is a brand new technique where you move the stop motion from the model onto the camera. This is something that we couldn't do before because cameras were so heavy. We hadn't really had. I don't think there was really a need for it. Essentially, you do see some variations of this in very early Doctor Who as well, which is from the 60s. But they all these companies doing science fiction things, or even aeroplane shots, tend to move towards the Star Wars method after this point, because it means that instead of having to articulate a very delicate model, they end up articulating a camera which can then be changed and over again for every different shot.
It's also worth saying that these don't actually have to have a person using them.
No.
They're all they can repeat the same movement
Well,
all the time on most of them.
not quite. That's a little bit later.
Is that on the later ones?
The later ones. So in 77, it was still mainly manually operated because we hadn't gained computer control. Another one of my favourite films used that for the first time, which I'll get to in a little bit. So in the 80s, following that, the next one breakthrough was actually the same film saga, The Empire Strikes Back. So if you watch any stop motion animation, so any of the Art of Sinbad, any of the Kong, Mighty Joe Young, anything from that decade, you'll notice that, let's just say, the creatures pop out of the screen a little bit too much. They're very, very in focus.
Yep.
You don't have the normal motion blur that you'd get from actually filming video footage at that time. So you'd end up with what would look like almost too real creatures that are kind of obviously superimposed in many shots because they're not blurring when they move. So in Empire Strikes Back, for the first time ever, they actually essentially each image they move the model a fraction of a millimeter during the exposure of each photo.
Oh wait! Oh my god, that sounds so painful.
Yeah.
There's a good video on Disney Plus series
Yes.
to watch.
Would recommend that show.
It's really
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
So yeah, that there's a
That's crazy.
the chap in charge was Phil Tippett. He was a Go motion genius. Who actually created that entire sequence for the AT-ATs / AT-ATs, however you want to say. But yeah, it's the first time you ever see a motion blur on a stop motion image, which is why, even though they look a little bit clunky, they look a lot more real than if they didn't have that blur at that time. We then move on to the 80s. So this, later on, we gained the VistaGlide camera. So I did a massive piece of this in my A-levels.
Nice.
The VistaGlide camera was a camera created specifically by ILM for Back to the Future Part 2. The reason was, during Back to the Future Part 2, you have one actor playing multiple roles. So they had to make sure that they could shoot the scene with a moving camera in exactly the same numerically controlled conditions. There's a very famous scene in it where you've got Marty McFly aged up in the middle, you've got his son to one side and his daughter, all three played by Michael J. Fox. And they got halfway through shooting that, and then they had a very small earthquake.
Oh dear.
And this was like 70, 80 hours of filming, or something ridiculous. So they had to start all over again
Oh.
because it had slightly jerked the camera so that the footage wouldn't align. So there's limitations to doing this.
Yeah.
So is that when they went to?
That's
fully
when they went
automatic?
fully
It's
digital.
amazing how quickly
Yeah.
it developed. Because I thought it was when Star Wars did it, but it must have been in the later episodes.
Yeah. It must have been. I think they must have used it by the time of Return of the Jedi because that was 88. Because in 89, the release of 89's Back to the Future 2, they were using this for actors. So you would assume that the technology would probably be produced using the Star Wars stuff, and then they added to it for this. I have actually recreated that scene as well. But modern methods, what you do is you just zoom in and pan across digitally in the software for things such as that, which is so easy.
Yeah. Much easier.
I'll try and get the recreated one up because of copyright reasons instead of the actual one.
Smart.
That is a good thing, actually. Hopefully all of the old stuff I can show
That's true. Yeah.
because it's over 100 years. We also then see the first CGI by ILM in '85 at the same time. So this is very basic CGI. I'm actually in the book in front of me. I found the exact page. And this was created using a very, very basic computer for what we think of now, but incredibly state of the art back then. And they were able to actually take an outline of a person, and then they would create a CGI variant of that inside their software to create a walking stained glass window. It was a knight that popped out of a window and then walked towards young Indiana Jones.
Once again, image looks cursed.
Yeah.
I think that's what they were going for. Around
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
no,
intentional.
I suppose. Yeah, no, yeah. I'm just
Because I believe he jumped out of the glass. Was it the glass breaking? I can't
Yeah.
remember the full.
classic Indiana Jones.
Yes, slightly,
Fair enough.
slightly of the occult, shall we
Yes,
say.
yes.
But the interesting thing is with this footage, they've also put it as a transparent overlay. So it means that they could get away with probably a multitude of sins of what we would think of nowadays. Because the lighting mostly would come from the environment because it's transparent. So when it comes to overlaying a CG item onto a real life scene that isn't transparent, you then have to ensure that the CGI model has the exact same lighting conditions inside the software, which they hadn't yet really reached because this was the first attempt. So instead, they could get away with using transparency here. Then we talked about Back to the Future, and now the proper CG. So this is CG which I have to admit I think it's aged really well to this day. I think probably due to the fact of a lack of need for lighting control and a lack of colours and complex texture.
Yeah.
So of course talking about the original Jurassic Park from 1993, which is something that I definitely hold dear to my heart. Because when I was a kid, I used to say "Osaurs," and I used to go out to the playground field and try and dig up dinosaurs, which the teachers did not like.
Just Luke in the middle of the sandpit. Just
Yeah.
with
I
a
want to find a
hole.
dinosaur.
Where's this fossil?
Actually, this makes so much sense
Yeah.
now with you in my garden.
I want to dig a turtle.
Wait. I'm pretty sure we can input the picture of him in the in the grave that he
Yeah.
dug himself.
It was meant to be a fire pit, but it was just by happen chance.
But yes,
The
it
exact shape of a grave that I would need at some point in my life.
I've got a picture of him, like it's a gift of him going
Like a mummy.
Yeah.
and now the current state of the garden, there's so much grass that, yeah, you probably couldn't even tell that it's there.
At this time, because it was the first time CGI was used as well, there are also some scenes where they use practical effects still. So an example would be when the Velociraptor goes up to the kitchen window and it blows its air onto the window. That was actually a puppet being used.
Okay.
And then they would cut to the Velociraptor CG when it showed the whole body moving. Another example is the T-Rex pushing the car over.
Yeah.
Now, famously, that model was actually made of a foam, and on I think it was the third or fourth day of filming, it started just shaking without anyone touching it.
Okay.
And the reason for that was because the set was a wet set. It was the structure underneath shackling
Oh.
because it was so heavy after containing so much moisture.
Oh, right. Okay.
So they had to find a way to eventually dry it out and
Yeah.
try and get it so that they could at least finish that shot
Jeez.
because it was essentially buckling under its own weight at that point.
That's crazy.
But yeah, then they cut to the full CG one when it was showing the T-Rex standing on top of the car, pushing in, and then they cut to the animatronic foot pushing in
Yes.
for a close-up. So you could get away with it because you weren't zooming in on all the detail at that point with the CG, which unfortunately is something that things like Star Wars Episode 1 didn't do in many shots, and therefore things like Jar Jar, if you watch the original version, not the version on Disney Plus, which has been completely restored and changed, the original VHS variant, you watch it now and it looks diabolical because they didn't do that mixture of practical and CG at the time. And this leads into James, who's going to take over for the next
modern era.
segment, the inverted comma modern era. Come on.
Well, when I say modern, when we say modern era, for me it's more the software that they use.
Yes.
Is what I've done. So perfectly with your Jurassic Park, they actually used. I didn't realize until recently they used Maya, which is a 3D rendering software, or modeling software. Should I say?
The OG Maya.
Yes, the OG Maya that had you struggled to do anything other than primitives. Admittedly, they did push the boundaries with their VFX, where they basically built a wireframe mesh of the T-Rex and then turned it into. They added the basic texture.
They actually added the skeleton inside it as well.
Was it the skeleton as
They
well?
did the skeleton and then they did the flesh on the top
Yes.
because there's a shot. If you watch the ILM video that's on Disney, they show each like layer being rendered, and that's how they sold it to the execs.
Damn.
They showed the
Alright.
framework, then they show the skeleton, then they show the skin on top of the skeleton interacting with the bone underneath.
Because there was an actual plugin you could get that created all this. I
Really?
don't think at the time when they were originally doing it, I think it would have taken so much rendered power to animate the skeletons, the muscle mass. But they could easily render that out as an individual image, and show it you. But for like the actual animation, I do believe it was the wireframe with the mesh with the texture on it, and then they actually consulted stop motion animation
Yes, they did.
for it.
Because there's an alternative version of the entire raptor scene inside the kitchen, which was made in stop motion.
Okay.
It was to give them the
The tongues are creepy.
Yeah.
They do like snake tongues coming out their mouths in it because they hadn't like nailed down the design of everything.
But
Right,
it
okay,
was.
okay,
It
so
wasn't
the-
the final one, but it was one that they then took that video and made it in. It helped them tailor the software and understand how they're going to do this.
This is for which movie specifically?
This is Jurassic Park,
Which one?
first one.
The first one.
The
Oh,
OG.
okay. The OG. Okay.
Everything else is just
Okay, okay.
copying.
1993, I think it was on this
Yes,
one.
it's as old as me.
We weren't even born.
No, we weren't.
So old. Oh, buddy.
You did it without us even having to
Just
do
a
it.
single tear going down my face right now.
But yeah, that was kind of the first time that all this came together. But I think it was the reason why, like Luke said, it has survived is because they just did it. They did such a good job.
Yeah.
Because textures weren't very good at that time. They didn't have the 4K textures. Didn't even have HD. I don't think they probably pushed HD at the time.
They did themselves a massive credit as well by making all the dinosaurs a dark brown color because it hides sins doing that.
Yeah.
So if you see
right.
bright characters like Jar Jar that were made back then,
Right.
it's really obvious because they stand out so much.
In contrast to the
And-
background.
Yeah.
Sure.
Best thing about it is I will fact check this myself at some point, and I don't know if they had very good bump maps. Now,
No, they didn't.
a bump map is basically a good way of adding depth to an image without actually having to model it.
Right.
So, but
It
because
was
of
all
that,
modelled instead at that point.
But because it was actually shiny, they couldn't get a full. They couldn't get it 100% matte due to just the software at the time.
Yeah.
That's why it really helped with the rain. So that it actually made a nice sheen over it.
Yeah.
And that's why it's just lasted so long. And even with the practical effects, they're still really good.
Yeah, they all look satin. So some of the examples that I'll put on the screen are there's actually a shot I think that's taken off of VHS. It's so staticky.
Which one?
The TV Tyrannosaurus Rex one.
Ah,
There's got
yeah.
a bit of static on it.
Yeah.
But the brachiosaur, if you look at it, it looks kind of satin. It doesn't look matte.
Yeah.
I do know that when they had to model basically the entire muscle mass of the image that we'll be putting on the screen, it took forever to render.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised. I mean, that's a fair amount of work.
But I think for that one, yes, they did have to do like the muscle under. They had to think of clever ways of animating
Yeah.
without having to fully model everything.
Yeah.
Which bits would actually show through basically on the skin.
Yeah, because it was really clever how they did, and that is how I think that's why it's lasted so long with the stop motion taken into account.
I suppose
sure.
this is where like framing and planning each of your sequences and your shots
Yes.
really comes into place. Because if you take everything into consideration, you could maybe get away with, I suppose, only modeling or kind of, I suppose, doing the muscle structure for just one side
Yes,
of
yeah.
of like the dinosaur rather than doing the entire thing. So yeah, no, that's fair. But that does take a lot of planning in advance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
There's we'll put on if we can, or we'll probably link it in the description. The ILM video where they actually show you the breakdown of the model, because that was really interesting.
Sorry, stupid question. I really should have asked this really much earlier on. ILM, what is it?
Industrial Light and Magic. So this
Thank you.
This is the company that George Lucas created back in the 70s, originally for Star Wars. He needed a special effects company. There wasn't any.
It was just
Right.
So he went and found a lot of crazy people
Yeah,
that just
yeah.
wanted to blow up.
That's fair. That's fair.
and they just did it.
Yeah, they were absolutely brilliant boffins. They had like crazy like accreditations and degrees and stuff, but couldn't find work or something. So he went, well, I'll tell you what, you do this for me.
Fair.
And then, funnily enough, since then they were employed until I think retirement age. Most of them.
Fair enough.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
Most of them were their entire career.
A lot of them became the advisors when it reached episode 1 to 3. And by then, ILM they just in the early 90s they also just opened up a brand new beautiful suite at Lucasfilm. I think it's called Lucasfilm Valley or something. They bought this wonderful like building and it was in the middle of nowhere. It was gorgeous.
I mean,
To be inspirational.
Yes, it is. most of the world of CG comes from them.
Right.
Yeah.
Like they were pioneers.
Yeah,
I of course knew all of this. I was just asking for the audience.
of course, of course.
Of course.
Definitely.
Definitely.
Goshen
And
dum dum
a
beach.
similar
No, I was asking for the audience. I'll have you know.
and a similar way I will gloss over it because we'll be going into this in a bit more detail. Lord of the Rings.
Oh yeah.
Lord of the Rings did
Lord
a very
of the Rings.
similar thing where it was basic CG mixed with matte paintings, dark lighting.
I have to admit, rewatched that, and a lot of it has aged quite badly. Specifically when they fly over the areas,
Yes,
and it's like, those buildings look shiny.
yeah. And the scale was a bit like.
Yeah,
The one thing I will say has aged well was Gollum.
yeah, he has actually.
He's done. I mean, you can still see sometimes where it's a bit bad, but I think that was one of the first mocaps, sort of
Yeah, it was.
like full.
Yeah, it was because it was Andy Serkis doing that, and
Yeah.
he had the dots all over his face,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
yeah. There's a funny picture of him actually in the. I think they've done it in the scene where he's finding the first bit where they find the ring.
Yeah.
Where he loses the ring, should I say? And then he's there jumping around in the water.
Yeah.
There's it's actually him doing that, and then the CG over him.
Yeah, I've seen some of the behind the scenes pictures of like him like getting because there's like a scene where he gets like really close up to
Oh yeah, that's the one where he's talking to himself as Smeagol and Gollum.
yeah, but like and then they show you obviously you see what you saw in the movie, and then you see what actually is happening, and you just see this man with all these dots just getting uncomfortably close.
I don't like it. No.
It was done so well. I must
He
say.
is a brilliant character
honestly.
actor. And the interesting thing is he's now gone on and done stuff where he's not like that, and he's doing actual acting in Andor. He was bloody brilliant.
I mean, he's Planet of the Apes.
He is.
That
Is he?
yeah,
Yeah.
What?
it's a mixture of both. There's a good video where it shows, like, 'cause everyone says, oh, it's just motion, it's mocap, so it's just acting physically. But there's a video of him transforming. I think it's Caesar he turns into.
Yeah.
Where he actually transforms from him acting with his face and things like that, and transforms into Caesar.
Yeah.
And it actually shows it carrying over.
Yeah.
It's really good. 'Cause it shows that they are actually, because some people, the misconception was they're not really acting.
No.
They are.
They are. Quite a lot.
That's actually a good lead on to probably the most well-known effect of full CG, Avatar,
Of course.
the first one, where they did have a lot of groundbreaking. They built on what ILM
Yeah.
did, but went 100% CG.
Yes.
So they had even there was directors running around with with these
Big poles.
cameras and things, where they weren't really cameras; they were just like frames
Yeah.
that held little balls all over it that were the camera in the CG world.
Right. Yeah.
So it's looking like, so they actually are directing,
Yeah.
and then like that, like when they want the actual humans to look at the aliens, should we say?
Ball and stick.
Yeah, there's just a pole and stick, and they all go, now look at that.
Yeah.
Now look at it.
They
Now
did that for
picture-
the Caminos in episode 2
Did
as
they?
well. It's really. I think there was one guy as well that I think they had it so it was like it's
To be
a
fair-
person with a helmet with a really long stick and a ball on the top.
I was just about to say that is what the Caminoids look like anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just a stick and a ball.
Probably the easiest one to
Yeah.
transfer, right?
It really is. No, I think you're right. I think I have seen the picture of the guy
Yeah.
with the stick, either coming from like a backpack or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just looks so silly. Oh dear.
But yeah, that was kind of it wasn't necessarily the first to use Soul CG. That was Toy Story.
Yes.
The
Of
Toy
course.
Story was the first, but this one was one that was like,
Trying to be real.
yeah.
Yeah.
They tried to bring it as realistic as possible. Now, if you actually look back at it, it hasn't. It's aged okay.
Yes.
There are still some bits on it you go, that need.
It still has what I call the Jar Jar effect.
Yes, it
Where
does.
some bits look really fake, but it's depending on the lighting and the framing and everything.
Yes. Yeah.
And if it's one of the things that Lucas always said was he wanted to put as much detail into a second of footage as possible.
Right.
Because what happens is your eyes are tricked to think it's real because
Yeah.
there's so much going on.
Yeah.
And that is something that if you look at like the battle droid scenes in episode 1, they still look really good when there's loads of battle droids and there's Gungans because they're tiny on the screen.
Yes.
So they've rendered it full size and then shrunk it.
Yeah.
But when it comes to like the close-up shots, they always are going to look bad.
Yeah.
In fact, I've got to say, like, especially with most recent CG, it seems to have stepped backwards to before that point on many things because
Well,
of timings.
I think that's actually with the. I think Avatar was probably one of the peaks of that, but that
Yeah.
was when I think the artists that were stop motion
Yeah.
sort of left the business / retired
Oh, of
Yeah.
course.
because they were really good at consulting
Yeah.
because they could they understood lighting, they understood individual frame, they understood movement.
And you wouldn't have really had any. You wouldn't have had anybody from the new generation.
Truly understand.
Well, either truly understanding or like wanting to learn it, or
Yeah.
like because everyone would have been like, oh, the next step is
Yep.
going full CG. So why would you send somebody on a course to basically go learn what the
I mean,
stop motion guys
admittedly,
do?
they do mocap, but even then, it's
What
still.
date was Avatar 1?
Pardon?
What date was Avatar 1?
2009.
Okay, yeah. So just before that, in 2003, the BBC shut down their entire prop and set production because they thought it was all going to go that way if they did anything in the future.
Huh.
They didn't do anything like Doctor Who at the time, of course, because Doctor Who returned in 2005. And then what they ended up having to get an external contractor company called Millennium FX, which still do their stuff, to open up basically and start doing it.
Fair.
Because it seemed like nobody had learnt it really.
No.
And there was no jobs there to move into because I was looking at it as well around 2011,
Yeah.
2012. I did all of this prop and set making and stagecraft stuff at A levels, And then I went and looked at the job market, and it was like, there's not much here, really.
No. Also,
That's-
not for too much,
No.
which is really surprising because I find
It takes a lot of skill.
it takes
Yes.
a lot of skill, and for a market, well, for like considering the job pool or the pool of people that you'd have for that job is quite small. I'm surprised by how low
Yeah.
the pay was
It seems.
and is.
I think everyone like assumes that it's done as a passion thing, and like, especially in the latest Star Wars, the funny thing is they hired a lot of like the Astromech Builders Club from the Link to the 501st, because they were the guys that knew how to do it,
Yeah.
and most of them like, quite a lot, I don't think actually they just did it for like fun.
Yeah.
But that sort of died out. I wouldn't say died out. I think props were still there, but it was more of physical props, like for
Like a gun.
a gun,
Yeah.
a backpack, or that's still there. But I think they lost the art of
Animatronics and puppetry.
yes,
would
that's,
say.
yes,
Yeah. And the stop motion completely.
Yeah.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
because like they said, the whole world was going VFX mad,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and
I'd love to see a modern like stop motion overlaid creature in a film with modern technique. Can you imagine how good it would be?
modern animatronics, it'd be
Well, yeah. If it was just solely stop motion, though, if you imagine like remaking that raptor scene in the kitchen now on a big budget with things like maybe you use stop motion in front of a green screen,
Yep.
and then you add the lighting in post in CG.
I mean, what would be
The results
amazing
would look
then-
amazing.
What amazing how amazing that would be is you could actually then have not a full overlay of CG, but you could add textures and little bits.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like if they,
Yeah.
for instance, like they were brushing on the, like you said, like fingers were,
Yeah.
on King Kong.
Yeah.
You could see it. They could CG that out
Yeah.
and make it perfect,
Yeah.
but it would still have a natural feel to it.
It basically gives them a good solid base to start from.
Yes, yes.
So
it does.
then everything else can just be added on top, I suppose,
And
later
that's
on.
where they've lost it because it's admittedly I love CG. I like to create 3D models, so I'm
Do
ve-
you?
I'm very much on their
That's a surprise.
I'm very much on their side. But I do see in films,
The value.
because we're trained, we see real things all our lives.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's you can easily pick out if something's fake.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're becoming more and more attuned to that the more we see of CG.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Because I mean, even like I'm still amazed that like even if you look at the old Toy Stories, they do look a bit cursed.
Yes.
But the
Yeah.
newest one, they've done a really good
That's
job
true.
of keeping the old style but have the modern.
Yeah.
Modern feel to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is like when you go back to Jurassic Park when they made the first 3D model, I have the utmost respect for them.
Yes.
Because I'm using modern. Well, I say modern Maya. I'm using 2019 Maya.
Still modern.
Yeah, it's very much push and pull on points,
Yeah.
and it is. It's time consuming. I've made many cars, and I've never done anything organic, bar some charred wood I did for a fireplace.
Right.
So I can do that, but that took for hours, and I even actually got a sculpting pen out.
Really.
So it's actually sculpted the wood, the texture in
Okay.
the bark. So that was on a small scale. Imagine doing that for an entire dinosaur. It's just amazing to see. And how they get away with it modern days, you'll see, is Disney's RenderMan, actually. It's quite clever what they do. It's a bump map is what they use, which is, like we said, adds depth.
Mm-hmm.
But this one is, the further away it is, the less detail it is. So when it's close up, if you see in modern films, if you actually look closely in like the 4K versions,
Yeah.
If you look into the distance.
if you look in the distance, the texture just goes.
Ah, right. Okay.
And yes, it's really good at saving on GPU resource, but you can still the eyes can pick that up.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you see on like the latest Star Wars, I think is it the Star Destroyers that you see the. Forgive me, I'm not up on my Star Wars lore. The triangle.
Yeah. You mean the Imperial Star Destroyers when they're inside the cloud with all the lightning? at the end of the last of the sequel trilogy.
Yes, that's one of them. I think I know for a fact that's what they used the RenderMan.
Yeah.
I think it's RenderMan. Yes, Disney Pixar RenderMan
Yeah.
software on that. And that, if you actually look at the back of it, I noticed it in the cinemas. I was like, "Huh, that's how they've done it."
Yeah. It looks lower quality.
Yes, it does.
Man, I don't notice this shit. It is impressive that you guys do, but I suppose they. I mean, the entire film industry kind of relies on people
Dumb
who
people.
aren't going to take too close. Sorry, what was that?
Nothing. I didn't say
No.
I said you're a very smart, intellectual chap.
Yes. Yeah, no, but I mean, without people who don't pay as much attention to things like that, they wouldn't make as much money.
Yeah.
But they look
'Cause
really good
otherwise-
if you don't pay attention to it.
Oh, you know exactly. That's the thing. Like, I mean, because I watched the same movie and I was like, "This is fucking great."
And sometimes I wish I could switch it off.
Oh yeah, no. I know I'm gonna go watch a movie. I don't go in there to question the physics, unless we're talking about ATATs. Then I'll question its entire
He has
bloody
got
purpose.
an irrational hatred of them.
It's they've got laser weapons, they've got star destroyers, and you're telling me you're gonna take on a ground assault with this 3-story tall thing that walks on 4 tiny legs. What do you think? It's silly. Is all I'm
My
saying.
childhood has just died inside me every time you say it.
It's no. I because we've had this discussion multiple times. I do get your point of, you know, obviously back then they weren't too sure about the future, but the thing is they had enough knowledge about some of the things because they got some of it really right.
I think the important thing that's missing from that scene, I feel like the reason they would have gone down the "it's gonna walk" route is because the rebellion have snow speeders which are designed to deal with snowstorms, and you can't fly a plane very easily for a snowstorm.
It's the future.
No, it's a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, Gresham. It's alternate.
They've got laser weapons.
Exactly. Alternate. Alternate. I'm going to keep saying it.
Biggest load of bollocks I've ever
Anyway,
heard.
my logical reason when I was a kid was like, oh, they can't get through the snowstorm. The funny thing is, though,
They could have still put the bloody thing on tracks.
That
Would have been
enti-
fine.
that entire scene is in the brightest daylight with no snow falling.
Yes, because they obviously wanted people to look at the thing, and they were, yeah. And the thing is, okay, if you're gonna make something that big, okay, fair enough, it will look, you know, pretty impressive. You're like, damn, that thing is 5 stories tall. It's walking towards me. It's the slowest thing known to man. I'm just like, at least make it run, at least make it gallop, you know, like a horse. Why not? Like
Robot Chicken did that.
Yeah.
They did it like it was a dog.
Because that, to be fair, would have been terrifying. Because I would have been like, "Oh my god, I've got a 1,000-ton thing running at me full pelt. I should be terrified." Here instead, I'm like, "That will be with us in approximately 3 to 5 business days." You know,
So
like,
we'll skip now.
yeah, like, shall we do dinner now before we head out? Like, you know, you get what I mean? It's so silly.
It's silly, but I still love it.
No. I love it, and then every now and then, like when I see like some of the Lego creations of it, they still look impressive. It's just the
Question why.
it's just the why. I'm
There
like,
is one
the
tiny
engineer in
scene
you.
that makes sense where it did make sense, and that was on Return of the Jedi. Very briefly, you see one. And what they've done is they've built this platform that's taller than the ground, so you don't get the creatures from the ground messing with the Imperial stuff. And it pulls up, and it's the height of the platform, so it's the height
Right.
of their bases. That makes more sense
yeah,
there
no, that's fair.
than it did in Empire.
So there's no way for it to get up.
Exactly.
That's fair.
Because yeah,
I can't remember which movie it was. I don't think it was quite an AT-AT that it was holding. It was a smaller version of an AT-AT, but it wasn't as small as a chicken walker. I might have. No, sorry, I take that back. I think it was a larger chicken walker, but it was a ship that just held onto two chicken walkers, and then as soon as it got low enough, it just dropped them down. And I'm just like,
No, you're thinking.
you've got the tech. You've got the tech to hover. You've got the tech. Why the hell have you gotten? I mean, like, guys, I've got to about 50 meters off the ground. Oh no, I can't go any lower. No. I'm gonna drop the chicken walkers. That's needed.
I think you're thinking of the ATT, which is the squat version being dropped by the Republic gunship in
Maybe.
Attack of the Clones.
Yes, potentially. Yeah.
And I think there is a tactical reason for that one, because you use all of the bodies in front as meat sacks to get shot, so you can get the big artillery in. Because they were shooting down all of the the droids had laser weapons, which are taller than the people shooting the ships down. So by dropping heavy artillery behind the troops would get shot on the way as the walker moves forward. Mm-hmm. Which is the tactic you have to use in the old Star Wars Battlefront as well. You have to make sure you have people in front of you get shot. Otherwise it just...
Cannon fodder!
Yeah, it's basically, it's just trench warfare without the trenches.
No, to be fair,
trenches of bodies.
To be fair, you've now just reminded me of a droid, or one of the crazier droids that I feel like we only saw a couple times in Clone Wars. I don't think we ever saw it in any of the movies.
Yeah.
It was the really tall one that walked on like 3 legs, big sphere on top with 3 guns facing 3 different directions, and it'll go bang bang, turn, the next barrel will pop round, bang bang, turn around, and I'm just like, why? I was like, I could see droids down there with automatic weapons. You've got more space. You could have done that. And once again, like, same flaw as the AT-ATs. You just had just a measly Jedi with a lightsaber just cut the legs off.
Question.
Yes.
Star Wars.
Yes.
Reality.
Future. Laser weapons. Laser weapons.
Future.
Laser weapons.
Just for the viewers, this conversation started before.
Yes.
We've also had this conversation about 3 or 4 times now.
I just can't get my head around it.
But he can get his head around shit CG in the backdrop. Which brings us back beautifully to what James is about to talk about.
That's true.
I suppose the one good thing about CG actually is, following a bit from what Gresham has said, they're bringing back old...
Practical.
Well, they're bringing back practical, but also they're bringing back old films using CG and practical, because they're looking at the old films and going... we could make that better now.
Yeah.
Like, we could have the amazing CG scenes, but also the practical effects with the fire and actually having people run through a physical world.
Yeah.
Which I suppose is what they did with the latest Dune, Part 1 and 2, which I think somebody on this table, is going to talk about.
Yes.
It's about worms.
It is about worms. It is about
And
sandworms.
spice.
Spicy words.
Spicy worms.
Now, most people have watched the movie that happened in 2022, I think it was.
Part one.
21.
21. The most recent one. But what most people don't know is that there was the same movie back in 1984. Now, I believe you've got access to the file. If you just quickly go on to slide 13.
There's a new... Oh, wow.
Okay, so now for all the viewers out there who've watched Dune, you'd notice that in the movie that there's these moments where when each of the characters are fighting, they have shields, and they basically trigger them, and it basically affects anything that has high velocity coming in. It basically stops it and stunts it, slows it down, so that the person who's potentially going to get affected by whatever that projectile is has time to either knock it out of the way or do something about it.
Do you know why the actual physics, the reason why it slows you down and it's not a complete stop like a normal shield would be?
Science.
Well, in the Yacht universe, I was
Yes.
going to say world.
Universe.
It allows air to pass through, because if it was to stop it instantly,
Yes.
it's a solid barrier, so
Yeah,
therefore air wouldn't get through. So that is why
That's why it flickers.
and it slows things down.
Yeah. And the best thing is, so we will be putting up an image of what the shields look like right now.
Before and after.
No. What the shields look like right now. And the thing is, you'd look at it and you'd just think it looks like a stupid amount of blur, motion blur, but it really worked quite well. Like
that's what it is.
yeah. It's all it was. From watching the boys over at Corridor Digital,
They are amazing.
Amazing. like if you've never watched that channel, I definitely recommend it. They dive into like more specifics.
Yeah, and they do their own CG things.
Yes.
They're amazing to watch.
Which is really impressive. But so obviously the shields in current Dune, CG, blurred but CG. 1980s. How do you think they did that, Lucas?
I would say they put some glass cylinders in front of the lens, maybe?
No.
No?
So
You're thinking too practical.
Yeah,
my
you're
friend.
thinking too practically. So they filmed it as it was. So they got footage of both these characters fighting as they were. They then remember all of this was still filmed on film.
They cut it all out, didn't they?
So they took it. They had people individually. So the producer wanted to create these boxes basically, and somebody had to sit there and draw an individual box on the front of the hand, the arm, the side of the face. Had to draw that on, and then with a printer, they basically printed a what's it called? Like a slightly blurry blurry kind of film. So film that isn't completely transparent.
Translucent?
Opaque?
Opaque.
Opaque. Yes. And basically
Translucent, opaque is when you can't see if you're...
Translucent.
okay, fine.
Translucent is when it's partially transparent,
Yes,
which is
partially.
quite often said as cloudy.
Cloudy. I wouldn't say this is too cloudy. I'd say it's closer to being transparent, but it's just ever so slightly off. But they basically had to print this on each frame, and that was how this was created, which is
Nice.
just pretty insane when you think about just how long that would have taken.
Yeah.
And there's
That's
a
how
lot
they
of
did
scenes.
the lightsabers as well. So they were all
Yes.
burnt on in the original
Yeah.
film. Because if you watch... One of the things that I really love about the new films, because I don't love many things about those new films, other than Rogue One and the Solo film, which is controversial to like, apparently. But because they've now got basically what is the Millennium FX style lightsabers where they glow. You get the glow on the faces, which is really cool, but they didn't get that in the old ones.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting to think that people used to sit there and cut out frame by frame film. I've done it digitally before now. I've had to if you're on the YouTube channel, if you scroll down to the very first videos, there is a Back to the Future Part 4 film on here, and there are some shots where there's a flying DeLorean, and I didn't have a green screen, so I sat there and I went around every single frame to make a flying DeLorean effect, which is fun.
But at least if you messed up.
Oh, you could go back and change it. Yeah. Yeah, you can't do that with film.
No.
No.
Now, I'd like you to move on to the next slide, actually. Slide 14. This is a scene which was also replicated in the new movie, where, they finally got to Arrakis after traveling through space using the Guild's ship. They land, and obviously they have their entire army. They have to make it look quite impressive. Anything you notice off about this? Because obviously you got
The fact that only maybe the front ship has people in front of it.
no, there are people in front of the other ships. If
You can just see them.
if you really look in,
Is it the fact that those are not people by some chance?
yes.
Yes.
And are they like little cocktail sticks? or something?
Basically, I don't want to give a percentage of this, but most of it is just they're just dolls. They're just dolls or little minifigures.
It's impressive that they did that.
It's a
but
mixture of that and
It's a mixture of
painting.
that, but then the
behind.
little bit where the ramp is from the ship,
Yeah.
all the way to the people right in front of it, and there's a flag there. There's a green and black flag there. Those people are all real.
Okay.
And this is all filmed in one shot. Bear that in mind.
Now, if you scroll down, you'll see.
You'll figure, yeah. If you actually, wait, we'll get your theories on how you think they've done it.
How they've done it? I would think it's a matte. Well, the ship is a matte painting. Then there'll be a angled floor, which has a cutout in it.
Yep.
With a number of these models on it. And then what they do is they place the camera so that you've got the matte painting in focus, the little models in focus, and something going on behind it, which would have been a set.
Yep.
Yes.
I mean,
You're pretty much right.
pretty much
close.
you're pretty much spot on. They built the damn thing.
Yep.
Yes, they did build the damn thing.
They built the damn thing. Basically, they rented a football stadium, and then they built this massive scaffold structure, and they built the ships and they put all the little minifigures. But we're gonna put up a picture where you'll see one of the guys setting up the scene, but there's a cutout, and the camera was placed. They basically framed it quite well, but somewhere really deep down that cutout, basically on the field of the football stadium, they had the actual people do the scene there, because this particular shot that the audience will be seeing right now was about 400 foot up in the air on a bunch of scaffolding.
Why didn't they use a matte painting? Everyone else did.
They used a matte painting behind it.
Yes,
The
for
actual
smaller
ship
ships, yeah.
was real.
Yep.
The
So
big
it's the
ship.
little ships that weren't.
So some of the little ships were actually scaled
You can
down
actually
versions of the
see.
model.
So if you look on that photo, the one on the left, the two on the right hand side, you've got one that shows reflections, and then you've got the other one which is matte.
Oh, yes.
Also, the other thing is if you follow the straight lines along the right side, you'll see it goes
Oh, it
straight
goes
and then
up a
suddenly it
bit.
goes boink. It just ramps up.
Yeah, it would look a lot better if they'd corrected that bit.
Yeah.
No, we'll just cover that up. It
but-
doesn't look bad.
But once again, it's one of those things that you're literally looking so far right
Yeah.
to the actual scene to try and spot it. But yeah, that was so that they could make the smaller models of the ships. But yeah, that's how they did that one.
That's a bit bonkers.
It is insane.
You can actually see on the second slide, there's a guy placing the individual army.
Yep.
They did do something similar in Star Wars, but I think most of it was done in matte painting. So when you have people like the Emperor and Vaderland, they'd have there'll be a model or a matte painting of a ship. Then there'll be the little section of the hangar with so many, about 30, 40 stormtroopers maybe, Vader and the Emperor. And then all around it, it was matte painting or it was models. So they did a similar thing, but they didn't do a bloody football stadium to make this massive thing.
And the thing is, like the scale of some of these models. We got another picture where you've actually
They're
got the
actually
guy
quite big.
sat next to the ship. It is not a small job.
No.
Yeah, they definitely went the hardest route.
Oh, 100%. And the thing is, sadly, I don't think it was for a lot of good either, because
No.
it didn't end up being that great.
No.
Because the Star Wars one, the one that Luke's on about, has
Yeah.
aged so well.
They did that really well. I mean, I've chucked in a couple other ones that we could talk about. I know Pirates of the Caribbean, big,
whoop.
big franchise. Well, big movie series that I know everyone loves.
Why is the rum gone, mate?
Why is the rum
Why is the rum always gone?
Because we just drank it, Luke.
Oh yes.
we need to put a picture of you running as Jon Sparrow with the dinosaur.
Yeah, being chased by a dinosaur as well.
But obviously they have a lot of scenes, including a lot of different ships, a lot of ships being destroyed, and most people, rightfully, generally thought that they were pretty much all CG. Not all of it. It turned out. In the second movie, there's a scene where the Black Pearl basically gets destroyed by the Kraken. When Davy Jones sends the Kraken after Jack, and they really wanted to make the destruction of the ship look impressive, so they built the entire hull of it, including the top deck. We've got a picture of the behind the scenes of how they did it, and they basically built these massive steel pylons, basically, that represented the two main tentacles that were going to do the destruction of the ship. And they pretty much had one take, really, and they just let it go. They just dropped it, and that's what they filmed. And the thing is, you're like, oh, maybe they did it with a scaled down ship. Based on the picture that we're currently looking at, the behind the scenes of the ships pulling the ship that got destroyed, it's not very scaled down.
Not much.
because
Yeah.
because they are small. Some of them are rubber dinghy like rapids, but rubber dinghy boats. But some of them are also tugboats.
They would have done that to overcome the supermarination issue they used to have with Thunderbirds and Stingray.
What's that?
So because the weight of an object is less if it's smaller, what they would do quite often in that was they would break something or explode it, but they'd have to slow the footage down to make it seem to have mass
Oh,
and size and scale.
so rather than doing that post,
They've just gone full. Let's go full size, and that way it will definitely look like a ship being crushed, not just a miniature.
I'm just trying to imagine like the person who had to pitch that being like, we could do this in post, but here's the cost of how much it would cost us to build a boat, get the rights to get all the permissions, gone through to take it out there, to then crush it.
No, that
and
is
the thing is,
insane.
they did this multiple times with a lot of other ships.
There's
and
also
then
the shot of the Commodore walking down the steps, because that was all like he was superimposed, I
Yes,
think.
yes.
But the explosions
Yes.
were all real, and
Yeah.
it was actually a ship.
it was quite cool because like they had like lots of different like air cannons like filled with like different amount of debris, but some of it they actually just did genuinely just break up.
Yeah.
And I think that scene, the scene that Luke's referencing, is scene at the end of At the World's End, where the Commodore Lord Beckett has finally realised this is it.
This
I
is
lost.
the end.
This is the end, pretty much, and then starts walking down the stairs, and that was a fantastic.
It's beautifully
scene.
done. The way his hand slides down the banister,
And you
and then
just-
the banister explodes just a millisecond
yeah.
behind every
It's
time.
so good. I think that has like aged so well,
Yeah.
even though
But that's what they're doing now, though.
Hmm.
They're bringing a really good mixture
Yep.
of CG
Yes.
and practical effects. There was one film, and I can't remember the name for the life in me. It begins with a Z, I think. It's based on a game. It's two kids that get transported when they play this game, and it's basically a game where you have to roll dice and you pick up a card, and you have to do like a challenge or do something. And they get transported into this world where there's these creatures that have to that feed on light, or they can sense energy, heat, and they're basically the house that these kids are living in. They built the real house and they put it on a machine that tilts it. So they had
Zephora.
Zephora, that's it.
Yes.
that's cool.
I remember it because everyone went, "Oh, it's just Jumanji."
Space Jumanji.
Space Jumanji.
But the scene in it where the house is like sort of being thrown apart. No, it's when the gravity gets increased. That was it. And so instead of, obviously they can't control gravity in real life, so the house tilts. So it's like they're being sucked in, but they only had one take of this because
Damn.
things were getting smashed.
Yeah.
And it was just amazing to see this entire structure on a machine to tilt it.
Yeah.
But the film wasn't exactly amazing. But that part of it was actually really good.
It was done well.
Like the technology behind it was pretty good.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's like you say where they're going now is like you said with Pirates of the Caribbean, where they're mixing practical, proper explosions, building these things, and then adding, for instance, the tentacles and things like that. I suppose that's what they need to do more of.
Yeah.
I was gonna chuck one more example in there that I just thought of as you mentioned the house being tilted. Inception. There was a fight that happens in the corridor, and then suddenly the
corridor
world
rotates.
starts rotating.
Yes.
And in the behind the scenes, they've literally built this thing, and it does actually rotate. And it's not easy engineering what they've done there. It's actually quite complex.
It's quite similar to so me and Amy went to see the stage show of Ghost Stories for me for the third time. But they do they do a lot of that on the stage.
Really?
Yeah, but they do it instead of doing rotating it that way. It's rotated, twisting the whole building round. So there's a shot where they've got there's a scene where they've got a chap in a security office, and you see him walk through the door. He goes through the door, and then whilst he's inside acting, the entire room turns to show the inside of the room.
That's cool.
And they did another one where there's a car going towards you, and it looked like a car that they basically chopped the entire bonnet off, and they inset the headlights to be there, so they could turn it on stage to be smaller. And you see that there, and then you see him driving along, and then he starts talking to someone on the phone, and then it turns around, shows the interior of the car.
That's cool. So
it's like a
it's almost like a
stagecraft.
cutaway. Yeah.
It's a stagecraft technique. I'm pretty certain that they probably have done it that way around before.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I was gonna say. I can't. Once again, this is the stage show that I went and watched. But it was someone basically walking over to get into the house, and he basically proceeded to nearly open the door facing the back of stage, so presenting his back to the audience. And then suddenly the entire thing just turns side on, and then it's him walking from right into the house, and where they'd done something really similar. And it's I think that's the best way of calling it. It is just stagecraft.
It's stagecraft, yeah. And then they're filming stagecraft, which isn't something I don't think many people ended up doing, because normally it's quite expensive. You have the other one where it's similar in the fact they had to film in a certain way, should we say, is the scene in Jurassic Park 2 where the camper van that they're all inside and they're actually clinging to the inside of it, because they had to film that in a particular way where they would actually have the actors hanging.
Okay.
But with like green screen around them for certain bits, and that is stagecraft techniques of moving buildings around, and where they like get tipped over the edge and suddenly the entire thing has to move.
Yeah.
It's always very impressive to see it being used again.
The only time I ever saw that was many years ago. I was in London, and I went to see Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
Yes.
And the car flying. They actually put it on a mechanical arm, and you can see it still. It didn't do loads of movement, but it was like going out into the audience and then back in. I just remember that and going, "That's cool."
Yes.
But it draws you into it.
It does. It's very immersive. I love the way that when they do it with the scenes of going between rooms on stage, they're trying to emulate what would normally just be a simple cut on a camera, and they're managing to just transform you in this way that it's just insane. It's brilliant.
I think ultimately what this boils down to is that what's been discovered is that there's a lot of different techniques to achieve different shots. And obviously some of them are better, some of them might not look as good, but I think what we're seeing is a lot of different... I think this is kind of actually where producers of movies actually kind of get to show off their craft, I suppose. Yeah. Because some really tend to have like an affinity to one rather than the other. I've noticed if I pick two like modern-ish movies, one would be a scene from I think it's The Hobbit, and the other one would be a scene from one of the Pirates of the Caribbean. Both scenes involved water. One was Jack Sparrow on a boat. He was fighting off the zombie sharks. I know we don't talk about the movie, but fighting off the zombie sharks. But basically, it's a boat that's on a full like hydraulic suspension rig, basically, that kind of like simulates the boat kind of going through the water. And then you've just got there's this funny scene where you've just got all these staff basically running around in blue morph suits holding a mattress to catch one of the actors who falls off the boat. And then obviously they do the CG water on that. But then go the other way, you've got one of the scenes from either Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit.
This one's The Hobbit.
This is The Hobbit. This is when all the hobbits are on the barrels sailing down the river. They built that. They built that with running water. They added terrain. They had like height to it, so they actually had flowing water, so that they could get like the authentic, I suppose, the effects of the water. So you kind of have one where Pirates of the Caribbean where they've been like, no, we'll just do the water in post, and then you got the other one where it's like, no, we'll do the water in real, and then the background will just So it's interesting, but the thing is, both of them made really visually impressive shots.
I mean, you can tell when in the Hobbit one, where they go from real life, what you've got on the screen here, and then they go on to when the barrels are jumping over land and hitting the orcs as they go through, as it breaks up. That is when it transforms into CG. But to get to that point, what they do, they filmed the first part of it with a GoPro as it's going down. So some of the actual footage in the film is GoPro footage.
I respect that. I'm not gonna lie, I'm surprised GoPro hasn't used that as like advertising. I would have been like, our product is so impressive. Would you not?
Yeah,
that's like the
you
best
would.
way of selling it. But I must say, it's just a funny image because obviously everything looks so good, and then you've just got all the actors just holding these little green ones because they're meant to be weapons.
These are my weapons. Right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because they'd have to CG in anything sharp.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yes, and some of the background orcs were CG as well.
Yeah.
But you can actually see like one or two of them on
Yeah.
here.
And it's. I think what I'm learning from all of this is that depending on the scene, you basically want a blend.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ultimately, but I suppose funding is always going to be the issue, right?
Well, for one of them, some of the water when they go down like the waterfall, that is filmed in the real world. It's from when a dam. It's twice a year. They do like a surge.
Yes, I know
And
this one. Yep.
So it's a surge, and it literally creates a river. And so some of the rocky terrain is actually that.
Oh,
That's cool.
interesting.
So again, practical.
Yes.
Mixed with
Mixture
CG.
practical. And you also get so we talked about the move from animation, stop motion being models to ships being shot. And then the latest Star Wars, what they actually did was they hired a load of people to make the models of the ships. And then they scanned them all to try and get all of those details that you can't do easily onto
That's amazing.
the CGI models.
That's pretty cool, actually.
And then they'll go between using the prop to using the CG, and it'll be more of a seamless transition.
Yeah.
So that because it's basically the same model, it's just there's a digital variant of it.
Yeah.
That's the best way to do it because modeling that in the 3D modeling software will take longer
And look worse.
and look worse. And to get it to look good, you would probably be years in the making. And whereas you could spend months making a really detailed model.
Yes. Scan it.
Which is the ironic bit, really, because originally everyone started moving to CG in the early noughties because it was going to be cheaper. And then they went, no, if we want to
it's
make it look
not
good
that
still,
much, yeah.
like another 10 years later, we're going to have to use practical again.
Yep.
They went round in full circle.
CG should be something to add. It shouldn't take you. It shouldn't take you out of the film. It should enhance the film, as opposed to that. I mean, there are some. The best way I found with CG and modeling in general, if you are doing static room scenes, for instance, like I believe a lot of the stuff like you see in catalogs and product stuff is all CG because it's a lot easier to do that. But to do films and do actual motion, because you have to add like motion blur.
Yeah.
It can take it away. So if you do practical mixed with CG,
That's the good.
it's the best thing. It's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Like if you had, like you say, with the ship, you could have it in Star Wars. You have your actual model coming out of into the light, like you see with all the other ships when they get revealed. You could then turn it into the CG, and then you have your thrusters. You don't have to bother with that. You can have little LEDs in there, and all you have to do is put the ion thrusters in there, whatever they use.
Although the original Imperial Star Destroyer's thrusters were just torches turned on.
That's funny.
And the same with if you, I don't know if you've ever seen the show Red Dwarf. If you both haven't, you would love it because it's hilarious.
I'll watch some of it.
I have seen
need to
clips,
get on the
and
good
it's
ones.
one clip where whatever they say, the opposite happens.
Yeah.
Yes,
I just
that's
love
quite funny.
It is genius.
Because it just keeps happening. Yeah.
But yeah, the ship of Red Dwarf is really obviously a torch. They did the same technique, but they didn't hide it.
Nice, nice.
So yeah, there's a shot of Red Dwarf going away. It's just like, yeah, that's a mag light in the middle there. You can see the bulb.
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
That's futuristic lighting.
Yeah.
My favourite scene, I will say, is from Star Wars. It's when the the Star Destroyers are being shown, and they come out of the darkness into the light.
Yes.
And it's slowly.
Yeah.
That I
Yeah.
love. I think that is one of the best ways to
That was-
show.
It's like Empire.
That
They
was
do it.
one of the more recent ones, wasn't it?
I don't know. I'm
Or-
pretty
or
sure
it's
it was
just
one of the
one of
older
the
ones.
ones.
Because
They did that.
again.
No, it was a Jedi.
Is it-
They had a lot of shadow effect in Jedi.
Yeah.
Because you see
Right.
this TIE fighter flying first.
Yes.
And then the Star Destroyer comes
yes.
out
Kind
into
of
the
zoom.
light.
It comes out of the gloom. It comes out of the dark, and it's just so.
That,
it's just
that
done so
will
well.
always be one of my favourites.
Yeah, I
I
can
think
see that. I
the,
can see that.
the one that always still blows my mind was the speeder bike chase in that film, because it goes from people sitting on prop, straight away cut to a model flying away in the same shot, and then they go between models on
Yep.
things to people on things, and it's just like you can't
Yeah,
keep up. It's
No,
so
it
it's
is just
Lucas's
crazy.
thing of it's so fast paced you can't keep up with
Yeah.
deciphering it.
But at the same time, it's also like you said, let's put as much detail into
Yes.
each of those
Yeah.
shots, so
Yeah.
that I suppose you just don't have time to comprehend.
Yeah, and all the forest is real. Beautiful forest. So, yeah.
Don't get that much these days.
No.
Beautiful forest.
I think they just hired one guy and he just walked through a forest for like months on end filming the footage. And then they did like the bits of like exploding trees and stuff separately. So
Yeah.
that was like most of the shots in the backdrop.
What
That's
do you
cool.
do for a job? Well,
Yeah.
I
Very
filmed a bunch of
tranquil.
trees.
Very tranquil.
look
Yes.
how many steps he got in.
Oh, quite a lot.
Many.
Unfortunately, it was before step counters. So
Oh.
I think we should probably wrap up there then. We've done a pretty good round.
Yeah.
Before I start banging on about how useless AT-ATs are.
Stop talking
Because
about them. You're not allowed an opinion.
Ridiculous.
Stop it. Not allowed an opinion on my favourite film.
Oh,
That'll be for another
the
episode.
laser weapons and laser swords, but now I'm gonna walk on this big bloody metal horse because that makes sense, doesn't it?
And on that
That
note, thank you very much. Do you want to do a wrap up today?
No,
Nah.
I think we've covered. Will Gresham ever love Star Wars?
No. Gresham does love Star Wars. Gresham does not understand the concept of AT-ATs.
And on that note.
On that note, goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.
We'll see you soon.
Peace.
Take care. Bye.